When authorities received a call just after sunrise reporting 5 people missing from a remote desert camp, investigators expected to find abandoned vehicles or tracks leading away from the site. Instead, there were no cars. No footprints leaving camp. Only scorching heat, heavy silence, and wind that had erased nearly every trace of where they had gone. Weeks later, what first appeared to be a case of travelers lost to the elements began to unravel, revealing evidence that suggested something far more deliberate had occurred. This was not a case of careless hikers or lost tourists. The missing belonged to a desert survival collective. Men and women who trained specifically for environments where mistakes became fatal. They studied topography, memorized emergency protocols, and practiced ration control until it became instinct. Confidence came with the experience, sharpened by years of controlled hardship. When they entered the Mojave Fringe in the summer of 2004, no one imagined they would need help. The final radio transmission arrived at 9:14 p.m. on the first night. Voices sounded calm. Coordinates were confirmed. No urgency crept into their tone. One member commented on the cold arriving earlier than expected. Another mentioned shade near an unfamiliar rock formation. The signal ended abruptly. In that region, drop transmissions happened often. At the time, nothing about it raised alarms. Concern didn't set in until morning. A support volunteer reached the rendezvous point shortly after sunrise. Hours passed beneath a cloudless sky. No figures appeared on the horizon. No dust trails cut across the flats. By afternoon, the volunteer walked toward the last known coordinates alone. The campsite emerged intact. Packs lay neatly arranged. A fire pit sat cold and undisturbed. Boots rested beside sleeping areas, laces loosened. Half-filled water containers remained untouched. GPS units had been left behind. People trained for desert survival don't abandon water. Search and rescue mobilized before nightfall. Helicopters scanned from above while ground teams spread outward in expanding grids. Nothing appeared. No tracks led away from the site. No evidence of violence surfaced. No signs suggested panic or confusion. 5 people had simply vanished from a place that showed no sign they ever left. The official explanation formed quickly. Heat exhaustion. Sudden temperature shifts after sunset. Disorientation causing poor decisions. Overconfidence meeting an unforgiving environment. The desert had swallowed them whole. The narrative settled easily, supported by statistics and precedent. Families rejected it immediately. These individuals weren't reckless. One member logged over 100 desert miles. Another had military survival training. None would leave essential supplies behind. None would scatter without coordination. Despite objections, weeks turned into months. Media interest faded. The case slipped into a familiar category, presumed dead, lost to the landscape. Stories from locals complicated that conclusion. Ranchers reported radios crackling late at night long after the search ended. Hikers described signal flashes from ridgelines where no camps existed. One camper claimed voices echoed from beneath the ground miles from the site. Officials dismissed each report. Sound carried strangely in the desert. Heat distorted perception. Grief encouraged imagination. Then something changed. 6 years later, a geology student surveying erosion damage noticed a narrow cavity concealed behind a collapsed rock face. The opening didn't appear on any official maps. Its entrance sat partially buried, invisible unless approached from the correct angle. Inside, the temperature dropped sharply. Scrape marks lined the stone walls, deliberate, deep, repeated. These weren't natural fractures. The cave rested less than 2 miles from the vanished campsite. When authorities reopened the case, expectations were grim. Bones seemed inevitable. What emerged instead dismantled every assumption tied to that night in 2004. Something waited deeper inside the cave, untouched by sunlight, preserved by darkness, and capable of rewriting the story entirely. Accessing the cave took 3 days of preparation. Rangers sealed the surrounding area, citing instability in the rock face. Engineers warned that a single misstep could trigger a collapse. The opening measured less than 3 feet across, sloping downward at an angle that forced anyone entering to crawl. Sunlight vanished after the first bend. Beyond that point, only headlamps cut through the dark. The air carried a metallic tang. Moisture clung to the stone despite the desert outside. Footing grew uneven as the passage widened, revealing a chamber roughly the size of a small living room. Scrape marks continued along the walls, clustered at shoulder height. Some ran parallel. Others overlapped chaotically as if made in panic. The stone bore signs of repeated contact rather than a single event. Near the center of the chamber, investigators found a backpack. The fabric had faded but remained intact. Zippers still worked. Inside sat items listed on the group's original gear manifest: a water purification tablet, a folded topographic map, protein bars hardened by time. The date stamps matched the summer of 2004. Dust suggested the bag had not been disturbed since it was placed there. The discovery challenged the official narrative. Supplies had not been abandoned randomly in the open desert. At least one member had entered the cave intentionally, carrying equipment meant for survival. The question shifted from how they died to why they went underground at all. Further in, the cave narrowed again. Scratches intensified near the transition, clustering around the passage walls and ceiling. The pattern suggested repeated movement through the space, not a single forced entry. Handprints appeared in mineral residue, some smeared, others pressed cleanly as if someone had paused there. No gloves. Bare skin. Bone fragments surfaced near the far wall of the second chamber. Initial assessment identified them as animal remains, likely dragged in by scavengers years earlier. That explanation failed after closer inspection. The cuts along the bone were too clean, too deliberate. Tool marks appeared along the edges, inconsistent with natural predation. A forensic anthropologist requested immediate testing. Results arrived 2 weeks later. The fragments were human. Identification took months. Advanced degradation complicated DNA recovery, but a partial match eventually linked the remains to one of the missing group members. No complete skeleton surfaced, only fragments. The distribution suggested the body had not decomposed naturally in place. Another item rested nearby. A handheld radio lay wedged between stones, its casing cracked. Corrosion coated the battery compartment. Forensic analysis later confirmed it was the same unit used in the group's final transmission. The damage pattern indicated repeated impact against a hard surface rather than environmental wear. It hadn't simply been dropped. Attention turned to the cave walls. Carvings etched into the stone formed irregular symbols. Some resembled directional markers. Others appeared random, overlapping in ways that suggested revision. The depth varied, implying different tools or levels of force. Several symbols pointed deeper into the cave system, beyond the explored chambers. No official maps showed tunnels extending further. Ground-penetrating radar contradicted that assumption. Voids appeared beyond the surveyed area, branching unpredictably beneath the desert floor. The cave was not a single chamber but part of a larger, unstable network. Portions may have collapsed years earlier. Others remained intact, sealed behind debris. Investigators faced a disturbing possibility. The group may not have entered the cave to hide from the elements. Evidence suggested they were led there, or followed something inside. The radio damage, the carved markings, the selective transport of supplies all pointed toward prolonged activity underground. Yet 4 people were still unaccounted for. Search efforts expanded beneath the surface but progress slowed. Structural instability prevented deeper entry without risking lives. Each decision carried weight. Excavation could destroy evidence or trigger collapse. Waiting risked losing answers forever. One question refused to settle. If the cave had been accessible in 2004, why hadn't it been used before? Locals had lived in the area for generations. Survivalists mapped the region extensively. Something about this space had remained hidden until the group vanished. Whatever drew them inside didn't leave with them. And the final chamber had not yet been opened. Authorization for deeper excavation came quietly. No press releases. No public timeline. Officials cited safety concerns, but internal correspondence revealed a different motive. The evidence already recovered suggested something beyond an accident. Whatever waited farther inside the cave had shaped behavior, decisions, and time itself. Heavy equipment couldn't reach the site. Progress depended on hand tools, shoring braces, and hours spent clearing debris inch by inch. Beneath the collapsed section, the air grew stale. Oxygen monitors dipped unexpectedly, forcing frequent retreats. Sounds carried strangely through the rock, echoing long after movement stopped. The third chamber opened vertically. A narrow shaft dropped nearly 20 feet, its walls smoothed by friction rather than erosion. Rope marks circled natural stone protrusions. Not professional knots. Improvised ones. Desperation left little room for precision. At the bottom, headlamps revealed a space larger than anticipated, wide enough for multiple people to sit or lie down. The floor told a story the walls had tried to hide. Indentations lined the ground in uneven clusters, shaped like knees pressed repeatedly into packed sediment. Scrape marks formed arcs near the edges, suggesting restrained movement rather than free passage. The mineral dust had been disturbed in layers, compacted and reworked over time. This was not a place passed through quickly. It was a place used. Fragments of fabric emerged first, sun-bleached, torn unevenly. Fibers matched the group's issued clothing. Some pieces showed stretching consistent with forceful removal. Others bore salt stains, likely from prolonged contact with skin. The absence of certain garments raised immediate concern. Food wrappers appeared next. Protein bar packaging had been carefully flattened, stacked in a corner away from the main area. Not discarded. Saved. Bite marks on the remaining contents suggested rationing far beyond standard survival protocols. Several wrappers showed faint impressions where teeth had pressed but failed to tear through, as if hunger outweighed strength. The smell arrived last. Despite years underground, a faint organic odor lingered, trapped by poor ventilation and stone. Forensic teams identified traces of human waste, sweat, and decomposing tissue embedded in the sediment. Time had not erased it. The cave preserved what the desert could not. More carvings covered the walls here. Unlike the earlier symbols, these marks formed words. Names appeared first. All 5 members listed, etched at different heights and in different handwriting styles. Some letters were clean and deliberate. Others wavered, scratched repeatedly until the stone fractured. One name had been crossed out. Deeply. Below the names, tally marks stretched unevenly across the rock face. Counts varied. Some sets ended abruptly. Others continued far longer than expected. Investigators argued over what they represented: days, ration cycles, watch shifts. One analyst noted inconsistencies that aligned with lunar cycles rather than solar ones. That theory was quietly dismissed. A shallow pit occupied the far end of the chamber. At first glance, it resembled a fire ring. No soot marked the stone. Instead, discoloration spread outward in irregular patterns. Soil samples revealed elevated sodium levels and traces of iron consistent with blood degradation. Not a single event. Multiple exposures over time. Bone fragments reappeared nearby. These pieces showed more extensive modification. Cut marks appeared along joints. Break patterns suggested deliberate separation rather than collapse damage. No teeth marks from animals were present. The absence unsettled even veteran investigators. One conclusion became unavoidable. At least one member survived far longer than search timelines suggested. Audio equipment uncovered near the pit deepened the unease. A compact recorder lay wrapped in cloth, its casing cracked but intact. Data recovery specialists restored fragments of corrupted files. Most contained static. One recording cut through clearly enough to transcribe. Breathing. Whispered counting. A voice pleading with someone not present. The final seconds captured a sound no one could confidently identify. It resembled movement through stone, followed by abrupt silence. 4 people remained missing. No remains surfaced beyond the fragments already catalogued. No exit tunnels were discovered leading away from the chamber. Ground-penetrating scans suggested collapses deeper within the system, sealing unknown spaces permanently. The desert hadn't claimed them all at once. Something prolonged their suffering underground, altered their choices, and turned preparation into liability. Survival skills became tools for endurance rather than escape. Trust eroded as resources dwindled. Time lost meaning without sunlight. When the cave was sealed again, officials released a summary stripped of its most disturbing details. The case closed quietly under environmental hazard statutes. Families received partial answers and no bodies to bury. The cave remains inaccessible. What happened inside didn't end with disappearance. It ended with adaptation.